How do we equip our families with a biblical worldview? How do we prepare the next generation for life? How do I grow in my walk with the Lord and in my marriage? If you wrestle with these questions, you are in the right place to find answers. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford, and today our guest is Dr. Joe Martin. He is the founder of Real Men Connect, which seeks to help men win at what matters most, loving our wives, leading our families, and leaving a legacy. He is an author and conference speaker. He's spoken around the world, and so glad to have him on the show today. Two quick items before we get to our interview. First, go to our website at www.entrustingthefaith.com, scroll down to the bottom, and sign up for our weekly email so you know who is coming up on the podcast for the week and who you may have missed the previous week. You'll also get a free resource when you do. And just as an aside, all our podcasts are available through our website, so if you're there, you can scroll through our past episodes to find other great interviews. Second, this episode is brought to you by my book, Leading Well at Home, How Husbands and Fathers Can Biblically Lead Their Families. Have you ever thought, I want to be a godly husband or father, but I don't know where to start? Have you ever heard that you need to do something to equip your family, but did not know how to begin? If so, Leading Well at Home will show you how you can love Jesus Christ, love and serve your wife and children, and take responsibility for discipling your family. You'll be encouraged and given action steps that you can apply so that you're moving forward. You can buy it online through our website at entrustingthefaith.com or leadingwellathome.com or anywhere books are sold online. You can also get a free excerpt on our website. Okay, let's jump into today's interview. Okay, well, I am excited today because I've got Dr. Joe Martin on the podcast with me.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Now, for those listening who are not familiar with it, what is Real Men Connect?
Well, Real Men Connect is a multimedia men's organization. I call it Big Brothers for Men, adult men on steroids. That's basically what we are. What we do is we help men win at what matters. And even frustrates them the most is men, and giving them help and hope in some of the areas that they're hurting the most in. And we provide that through brotherhood, through accountability, through community, through coaching, through counseling, giving them the support that they need in order to succeed, not only at work, but more importantly, in the home and leaving that legacy that you mentioned.
How long has Real Men Connect been in place? What kind of led you to start it?
Well, it's only been in place now. Matter of fact, this is our 6th year of me doing this as a full-time profession now. I walked away from doing educational consulting. I was an educator, and then a lot of my accomplishments in life has been me working as a top consultant in the education market, working with over 750 school districts all over the country in 4 different countries, being a published author in that niche and in that industry. And you said, what got me into this? It was that. Having worked with so many school systems in and outside the United States, working with teachers, interacting with students, you're talking about over 1.6 million kids, training over 260,000 teachers. I noticed something, and maybe I'm a little bit slow, Eric, but it took me a while to realize that, wait a minute, a lot of these problems can be traced back to the home, in which a lot of us know that already. But in particularly, I knew that, but in particularly in the home, I saw there was the wound of the father. And 9 times out of 10 cases, it was something with the father, associated with the father. He could have been physically not present in the home, or he could be physically present at home, but not emotionally attached or engaged with his children. And so those wounds were manifested in the classroom because you have, I used to teach elementary school as well as high school, as well as college. And in elementary school, we start seeing a really increase in the anger among elementary school boys. And I'm thinking, what's going on? How, they're only 6. Why are they so angry about? And what it was a manifestation of problems in the home with the father. And that was their way of acting out. So what I realized as I continued to travel across the country, and then I started doing these kind of like these straw polls to find out, hey, how many of you grew up with a father in the home that you could respect and admire, who kind of modeled manhood for you, that you said, man, if you were a girl, one day I want to marry a man like that. And if you were a little boy, I want to be a man like that. Do you know it was less than 10%?
Wow.
Less than. I did not. All the years I've been in education, I was in education for over 2 decades. And then I didn't know it. So I thought maybe all the other teachers knew it and the educators knew it and I didn't. Then I started polling them about it. And they were saying the same thing. If anything, they said it was actually worse than 10%. And that's when I got it. And I said, I need to do something about it. I always tell my own children that if something is bothering you and it's a problem to you, maybe God has called you to be a solution to that problem. And so, of course, I'm asking God, well, what do you expect me to do about it? I don't know. I grew up in a broken home. I didn't have my dad there and all this other stuff. And that's when I realized that what I needed to do is get men to come into community to learn from each other and to learn from the guys who had done it right and have them disciple the younger men and mentor and coach the other men. That's why when I mentioned we're like big brothers and big sisters on steroids, because we're doing it for men. Most time we just think kids when we think mentor and we think coach in community, but no, men need it too.
So you mentioned community, that mentoring, coaching aspect. So how important is that to guys, and what keeps us from seeking it out? Because I know as a guy, that starts getting into that uncomfortable area. And it's like, oh, I think I can handle it on my own. But, that's just a lie, right? I can't handle it on my own. So how important is it? And what have you seen that keeps guys from doing it?
Now, I'll start with the first part of it. How important is it? Well, I've told women this because I don't think women understand this about us as men. I tell them, here's a secret that you don't know about men. We're only as strong as the number of other stronger men we have around us. A man who has no accountability can't be counted on. And all you got to do is look now as men, we can look back at our own lives and think about it. Most times when we got in trouble because we didn't have accountability. And you become as strong as your team. We should know this because we love sports so much. Tom Brady just won another Super Bowl, right? He's going to pursue another one. And every time they say, oh, you're the GOAT, greatest of all time, Tom Brady. What do you see him do all the time? He says, I could not have done this without what? My teammates.
My team.
But he's going down as the GOAT. But what about his offensive linemen? What about the wide receivers? What about the running backs? How important they are for blocking when they're getting blitzed. And so even now, every great player knows that. Michael Jordan would tell you, Michael Jordan, when he did his Hall of Fame speech, do you know the first person he thanked when he got it? Wasn't his wife. It wasn't even God. Guess what the first person he thanked? Scottie Pippen. He said, he says, you notice, and this is, I quote Michael Jordan, he says, do you notice in every shot they just showed before they introduced me, there was not one shot where Scottie Pippen wasn't in the picture with me. And they gave Scottie this long round of ovation because he said, and there's a common theme to everything that I've achieved. Scottie Pippen was there, but he also had Phil Jackson, another coach, teammate. So I can go on and on, but you see, that's how important it is because no one in the history of sports has ever won a championship without a coach. Name me one. I'm talking about even an individual sport. Tiger Woods is a golfer, but he has a swing coach. He has a nutritionist. He has a caddy. He has a psychologist. Somebody's helping him fine tune his game so he can operate at his top performance. So how important is it? A man is only as strong as the number of other stronger men he has around him. So you want to show me how strong you are? Show me your team. Show me who's back. See, I see you, Eric, on this podcast, on this video screen, but you didn't get here by yourself. Somebody's helping you behind the scenes that I may not ever meet. Now, you can take all the credit if you want to, but you and that person and the other people around you know the truth. He will be nothing without us. He'll be just hanging in the wind if he didn't have us. Now, that's the how important it is. Now, why don't we do it? If we're obsessed with sports and we see how important it is to have a coach, to have great teammates, why don't we do it? You mentioned it earlier, pride. That's the number one. That's not the only reason, but that's probably one of the biggest reasons. Because if I tell you I can't do this by myself, you might think I'm weak. You might think I'm inept, incompetent. So I don't want you to have the wrong impression that I'm not I'm not equipped enough and powerful enough to do it myself. Because when we get around as men do a lot of what I call posturing. One of the first things they ask you when you meet a stranger, they don't ask you, who are you? They ask you, what do you do? Because we identify who we are based a lot of times on what we do. So we don't want you to think less of us. We want you to respect us. And so it's hard for me to think that you can respect me if I tell you how vulnerable I am and how inefficient or deficient I am in certain areas of my life. So a lot of time it has a lot to do with pride. Also, it has a lot to do with fear. The pride is I can do it by myself. The fear is, what are you going to think of me if I tell you I need the help? And what I'm realizing, and I'm getting this now more often, I'm realizing a lot of times this has to do with incompetence. And I'm not saying it from a negative standpoint that we're stupid. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we just don't know how. I don't know how to seek the help. I don't know how, because I'm afraid of being rejected. That's the fear. So how do I approach Eric to let him know I would like him on my team? I would like him as a mentor. I would like to be able to open up and share with him a struggle that I'm having. So I call it the undiagnosed learning disability of men. You heard of ADD, ADHD? I call it ABT, ain't been taught. And so we don't know how to do the approach. So there's a lot of other reasons, but the main one to me seems to be pride, fear, and incompetence is to me the main three ones that I see that's keeping us back from getting the team that we need around us.
Wow, that is powerful. I like that. Only as strong as the team around us. That really speaks to me. I could, you said that. I'm like, wow, that is, I think about, guys I know, it's plural, right? It's a community. It's not the single lone person. And the fear thing too, that, the pride, the fear, the incompetence, those are really strong. And I know in my own life, I'm just sitting here thinking back. It's like, yeah, I can see those in different places all the time. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. You've recently come out with a new book, Man Accomplished, 50 Challenges to Help You Become the Man God Made You to Be. Tell us a little bit about it. What led you to write it?
Well, wow, I don't know where to start. What I can tell you is that it's a different kind of book. And people say, everybody says it about their book. Well, let me put it this way. I didn't write it to make money because I don't expect anybody to finish it.
Wow.
Most people, that's crazy. Most people never write a book that they don't think anybody will finish. Now, I want people to finish, but because it's not written like a regular book, it's written through challenges. It's called Man Accomplished. And the subtitle is probably the more important word than Man Accomplished. The subtitle says 50 challenges to help you become the man God made you to be. So imagine opening a book and then there's challenge 1. You can't move on to chapter 2 until you say Man Accomplished based on an action challenge. I'm challenging you to do something that's out of your comfort zone. And it's to help you become a man. Now, remember our organization, our ministry is called Real Men Connect. Every challenge that I put on there is getting you to connect with men. But what do we say that? Why don't we do it? Fear, pride, and incompetence. We don't know how. Now, I'm showing them the how, but so we don't want them to use that as an excuse. So what do you think is going to stop them? Pride and fear. So the man who finishes this book he's overcoming his pride and his fear to say, you know what, no matter what it takes, I am going to do this. Now, let me tell you it's one thing to throw challenges into a book, but this is a little bit different. And it's going to sound crazy, Eric. God made man in one day. And I work with men all the time. And I say, God, boy, I see so many things wrong with us as men. Wow, we have so many issues, so many problems. And one day I was praying and God says, well, what did you tell your son? I said, God, if there's a problem that we're supposed to, be part of the solution. He says, okay, now be part of the solution. I said, what are you saying, God? You want me to make a man? I said, God, you did it with just, he says, well, I'm going to let you build a man. And I want you to build him piece by piece based on your past successes and failures, your history, your story, based on all the things you've learned from coaching, mentoring, and counseling hundreds of men, what you've learned from the stories of the kids that you used to teach over 26 years, what you learn from the teachers in the education system, what you learn from speaking to thousands of men at different conferences, retreats, and churches. If you could build a man from scratch, what would you teach him first? What would you teach him second? So not only is it put into challenges, it's sequential. So each one builds on top of the next. Now think how all the areas of importance to us as men in our lives, all the you got finances, you got being married, you got being a father, you got sex, you got finding your purpose, you got this. Do you know we don't even get into sex and money until close to the end of the book? Because what I realized, it's not as important as we think it is. There's a lot of other stuff that's more important, and why we screw up our finances and when it comes to sex and everything else. And so I did that over a course of a year. Every time I would write, a writer, when they write, they get into a flow and they just keep writing. Well, as soon as I finished the first challenge, I said, all right, let me go to number 2. And God said, stop. I want you to go about the rest of your week, come back with me again the same time and pray like you did before, then write the second step. Then stop. It took me the longest to write this doggone book. And I couldn't wait to finish it, but I just followed the process. So I went through everything myself in the book to do it. And I honestly, and I just being honest, I really don't expect many men to finish it. It's not like it's impossible. You really got to humble yourself to do it. To say, you know what? I know it's scary. Wow, I can't believe he's asking me to do that, but I'm going to do it afraid. And most men will say, you know what? I'll do it later. They'll put it off and they'll probably never go back to doing it and finishing it. And I can't tell you how many guys have started. Oh, Joe, this book is so awesome. Man, I'm on this. And I don't hear from them ever again. I say, what happened? No, nothing. They stopped. They got around maybe 3 or 4. They got about 5. They're like, oh, I didn't even do the last thing he told me to do. And none of the things are too impossible to do. They are doable, but it takes you being humble and it takes you being hungry to be able to do it.
I like how you said, sometimes we just need to do it afraid.
Yeah.
Right. It's that, it's that issue. Courage is not the lack of fear. Courage is just stepping out in the midst of the fear. And so
Winston Churchill said it's not only that, he says it's doing it with enthusiasm, afraid. I said, I haven't gotten to that point yet, but that's a good goal to shoot for.
It is. Yeah.
Do it with enthusiasm, even when you're afraid.
It is trying to find that, asking the Lord, just give me that joy as I step forward into what I am scared to the death of actually doing. But I think we need that, we need that reminder as guys that, it's okay to be afraid, right? We hear that, oh, don't be afraid. Well, that doesn't always fix it, but it's okay to keep moving forward, knowing that the Lord is going to walk us through that in that fear, and He'll use that. So it's really important.
I actually think that fear is actually a great thing from the standpoint that it requires you to depend on something greater than yourself. To me, if you have a vision and it doesn't scare you at least a little bit, is it really from God? Because if it doesn't scare you, that means you can do it, quote, by yourself. But it should scare you because the question you say, how can I, by the help of God? And everything that I've ever done has been great, has been me being petrified and terrified. Doing Real Men Connect. Never done anything like this before in my life. God, I don't know what to do. Perfect. God, you want me to do what? I don't know how to start that. Great. That means you're going to seek me for the answer. But when you think you have it all figured out, then you're never going to ask, what do I think about it? You're only going to do what you feel and what you think about it. And that's got me in more trouble than I can ever tell you on one show, of me getting ahead of God, thinking I got this figured out. I can do this. I got this. That's pride. Where He wants you to be humble and say, depend on me. I will walk you through this. No different than me trying to finish the book. I wanted to keep writing. He said, no. Then you're going to be doing it on your own. Seek me and do it on my timetable, so you have time to reflect and then go back and change what you need to change, or reshift them on what you think comes first before this. So to me, fear is actually a good thing, as long as it doesn't control us and keep us paralyzed not to take action.
I like that too, that it's good to have it, to rely on the Lord. I know those times when things are a little uncertain or a lot uncertain, when things are just feeling really funky, I know I'm praying more. I am seeking the Lord more. But man, like you say, when those times when I think I've got it, well, those are dangerous
You
times.
ain't got it.
No, that's it. You don't, man. You don't.
I ain't got it.
It is a total illusion. So I appreciate that. And I love that you set it up step by step with the challenges in the idea of community, because I am convinced, at least in my experience, community is the hardest thing for me to do. And so, others maybe not, but man, that's all I can claim for me is like, that's just not what I gravitate towards. And so I appreciate that. In terms of our church, it's just with guys, what do you think is the sort of the greatest need for men in our churches today, whether they realize it or not? And, kind of what would you tell them to do?
I have to separate the man from the church, because the church to me is a separate entity, because I would say there's two different things going. What I think the church need to do for men is to let them realize how important their role is and not minimize our role. I'm not saying churches are doing it intentionally, but if you go to most churches, they're going to be predominantly women. And so the churches tend to cater to the women, but we need to emphasize how important that man is, even if it's ministering to the women, of how important the man is. And I guess that's a little bit of bridge of what I think men need the most, and where I think churches are missing us. I'm often asked that same question, which you just asked me. I said, Joe, what are the major problems that men face? I said, if you can fix one thing, and this is what I start the book with. All right. If I could change anything, if I couldn't do anything else with men, what would I want to do to men that could change their lives completely? I would get them to understand who they are, their identity in Christ. If I always thought purpose was the most important thing. You got to know why you were put here on this earth. You got to know, what you were created to do. Because even Rick Warren wrote one of the best-selling books on purpose called The Purpose-Driven Life. And so I think it was like number 2 next to the Bible in nonfiction. And so, but everybody thought, oh, that's it, purpose. But guess what precedes purpose? Identity. Purpose can't precede identity. You got to know who you are to know why you are. And so you got to know who you are. And what I realized that most of us as men, we struggle with knowing who we are, because we define ourselves based on, I call it the Asians. You know what I mean? This is what I mean by the Asians, Eric. What we do, occupation. We define ourselves based on our compensation, how much we make and how we can provide for our families. God forbid we lose our job and can't provide. Oh, the world is coming to an end. I'm not a man anymore. Says who? Occupation, education. Where did you go to school? How much education do you have? You're revered if you have more education. The fact that I have a doctor in front of my name tends to provoke a different response than a person who, like me, who came from the hood without that PhD. And so occupation, compensation, education, also reputation. How popular are you? And I'm not talking about just how popular, how many people know you, but how attractive are you to women? How it's that prowess. How many people are following you? How much influence do you have? How many likes are you getting? How many people know your name when you walk into a room? Again, that posturing. Where are you on the pecking order when it comes to men when you step into a room? So we base it on that, our identity on that. And also on what I call intimidation. Our strength, physical strength, our physical intimidation, how we can show that we're stronger than the strongest person in the room. Think about the movies we like watching, the action, the sports. Now that's a man's man based on what? Because he can knock out everybody. He can defeat everybody. And so if I could do one thing for men, I think what's hurting us the most is that we believe we're what we do, where we came from, what people say about us, what people think about us, we think we're our mistakes, our faults, our flaws, our rejection, our fears, our doubts, our insecurity. We think we're everything except what God told us we are. So if I can give a man one gift, if he didn't even just gone through one chapter of our book, stop there. Find out who you are, what God says you are. Not even what you think you are, because we can have stinking thinking sometimes. But who does God say you're? God says you're his beloved. God says you're more than enough, that you were worth dying for. that you're valuable, you're important, you're necessary, you're needed, you're holy, you're separated. I can go on, but most men don't believe it. But you don't understand, I was sexually abused as a child. You don't understand, my dad abandoned me. You don't understand that I've been discriminated against my whole life. You don't understand, but I'm too short. You don't understand, all these things impact our destiny. What you believe you are determines what you're going to do. And so I would give them that. And I think what the church can do is help remind us of who we are and reminding the women of who these men were meant to be. Instead of telling your husband what he's not, speaking to him what you know he can become based on who God says he is, and watch him live up to that, as opposed to pull away and withdraw. Because you know us as men, if we can't win, we're quitting. We're going to take our PlayStation and go home. If we can't win, if you beat me at Madden all the time, I'm going to stop playing with you, Eric. I got to win sometimes. And so that's what I would think identity when it comes to the man personally, but with the church, is to rebuild the importance of a man in the home, in the family.
That makes so much sense. And I think you're absolutely right. It's that identity piece that is the foundation that drives the why, that drives the purpose. I think it's the easiest thing that we forget. Mm-hmm. Like you say, I love what you talked about, the Asians right there. That I totally identify it. And I think any guys listening to this are like, yeah, I mean, if they don't hit all of them, they at least hit a handful, right? I mean, it's
absolutely.
If we're getting down into the you and me of it all, and we're being honest with ourselves, those are the real things. And yeah, it's just humbling ourselves before God and accepting who he says we are. Man, I know I need that. And I think you're right. We do need, in the church, we need to affirm that in right. The men.
There you go.
So that they can aim for that target of what God has called us to be. Mm-hmm. I love that. So one sort of tangent question, because I know we've been talking about, we've talked a lot about men. We talked just one question about dads, because you've got some awesome information on your website, some great blogs. You've got a phenomenal podcast. You've got just a ton of things. One of the blogs that really caught my eye, you talked about different kinds of dads. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really powerful. What is it? What is the right kind of dad who biblically leads their children? How would you say, what is one thing we as dads can do to do that well?
Well, I'm going to let us off the hook, because we make it a lot tougher than it has to be. Because I've worked in the education system, also having two grown adult children now of my own, I can look back and look at some of the mistakes that I've made, some of the things I've learned from being in the classroom to raising my own kids. And I remember telling my son, who's now Kimmel's 25 now. I remember telling him the other day that I said, I realized something about being a dad. I made this a lot tougher than it has to be. And he said, Dad, why you say that? I said, I'm realizing now from mentoring all these because I mentor a lot of boys. And I said, I realized that all you have to do to be a great dad. Now, we're not talking about being a great man. We're talking about just being a great dad. Because there's a difference between what God's called you to do as a man and what God has called us to do as dads. I said, to be a great dad, what I'm realizing from working with all these kids and even raising you as my son is that I don't have to be perfect. I said, all I have to do is be present, be there when you need me the most. Be present, and when you need me the most, be available to you when you need me the most. Even if I screw it up, you're going to always remember when I needed him the most, Dad was there. That would cover so many mistakes I can make as a dad. Now, I'm not telling us to go out and make a lot of mistakes, but don't stress yourself out trying not to make mistakes. But if you want to focus on anything on what to do, because we're looking at what we don't want to do. I don't want to raise the way my dad raised me. I don't want to do the way my dad did this. I don't want to abandon. You can't get to where you want to go avoiding what you don't want. You got to focus on what you do want. And what you want for that kid to know is that my dad loved me unconditionally. He was present. He was intentional about it. And when I needed him the most, he was there for me. Now, if you read between the lines in that, that's the relationship we should have with our Father in heaven. that I may not agree with everything God does. I may not understand why God does. God, why did you allow my mom to die on Thanksgiving Day? Are you following me? I don't understand that. God, why did I lose 7 people in 1 year? God, why was I sexually abused as a child? I don't get you, Daddy. But I know one thing, that I look back over my life. No matter what I went through, Eric, he was always there. He was always there. He was present, even in my tears, even in my brokenness, even when I thought he had abandoned me. He was there. And if I can give that to my son and my daughter, they're not going to remember anything else other than Dad was there. He was intentional. He loved me unconditionally. And he told me the truth. Whether I liked it or not, my dad was honest with me. And to me, any dad can accomplish that. Any dad, but we can't do it alone, because there can be times when you don't want to be intentional. There can be times when other priorities are going to distract you from being fully present. Then you need another man to come alongside of you. Another guy, community, mentor. Say, hey, Eric, I noticed, man, you're really into work for the last few months. What about your wife, man? How's everything going at home? Is everything okay? Oh, no, she'll be fine. When was the last time you took her out? See, that's what we need help to remind us of what we already know we should do. It's funny, as we get coming out of COVID now, people ask me when we first went into COVID, what should we be doing now that we're socially distanced from each other? I said, what do you mean? I said, what should we be doing? I said, exactly what you should have been doing before COVID. Being engaged with your family, being intentional, building relationships. You got to be more intentional about it. And so that's what I would say.
Wow, I like that. And be present, be available, unconditional love. It is, it's that time together. It's being able to say, hey, can you help me with this? Hey, look at what I did. Hey, my son's 10. And so I see that each day. It's like, hey, Dad, let me show you this, or hey, Dad, let's do that. And I have to pause. I have to say,
right,
this is important. Mm-hmm. This is more important than probably whatever other, the stuff that I'm trying to do. It really doesn't have it. It may or may not have any eternal consequences at all. But
right.
But man, taking 5 minutes in that moment, that has long-term repercussions in doing that. So I love that. And
Eric, I'll give you another practical example. I tell you, my son is 25 now. We just I'm from Florida originally. I live in Tennessee now, and my niece graduated from high school, which makes me see how old I'm getting now. I can't believe my niece is graduating from high school. So my son and I go down to my niece's graduation, and the drive from Chattanooga down to Orlando, that's where my sister lives, it's about 7 hours one way. So you're talking about 14 hours. We spent 14 hours in that car without listening to the radio, without being on a cell phone, just talking. Whenever he would stay awake, that we were talking. And I keep thinking, if something should happen to me, my son and I spent a lot of time together over these 25 years. And I can think of all the stuff I've bought him, all the places I've taken him all around the world. But I'm going to tell you what he's going to remember most. Time like that in the car that we talked. Didn't cost us a dime. Being fully present. And when he did drive, I wasn't on my phone. I'm sitting there talking to him. And I think that's what we remember most. I can't say that about my dad, but my son can say it about me. I did the same thing with my daughter when she was 12. I took her on a trip that was 12 hours. Could you imagine being with the 12-year-old for 12 hours and she can't be on a cell phone? She can't look at, we got to talk to her for 12 hours. But that's what she's going to remember most. She's now 18 now. But Dad, she always said, Dad, remember that time we drove to Pensacola? And Mommy can't believe that all we did was talk the whole time. But that's being fully present. And now here's the truth of the matter. I didn't do all the talking. I did a lot of question asking. And I let them do the talking, and I did a lot of listening and reflecting and asking more questions. So we don't even have to be a talkative person, but you got to be curious. You want to get into their heart and understand their hearts, what's going on in their mind. And a lot of it's not going to make sense. but that's what they're going to remember the most. Were you there when they needed you the most? I want to know what makes you angry. I want to know what makes you sad. I want to know what you've lost. I want to know how you're hurting. I want to know what your desires are. What are your dreams? What do you expect, without me being a dad trying to change your mind about things? I don't want to change your mind about what you believe. I want to know, why do you believe it? And help shape that. So if you're going to believe something, believe it for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. And so we got to be intentional.
I need that reminder. I know everybody listening, they need that reminder. It's just that intentionality, asking questions, being genuinely curious, spending the time. Like you say, it doesn't cost any money, but it doesn't just happen automatically. We got to step up and really take that step. We are about out of time. We could talk for a long time. This has been a wonderful conversation. For those who want to know more about you, know more about Real Men Connect, where would you like them to go?
Oh, the easiest place is just go to realmenconnect.com, name of our organization, realmen, MEN, connect.com. And if they go there, they'll find as many resources that they're looking for. What comes from our books, our podcast. As you know, Eric, we have one of the top rated podcasts on for Christian men on Apple Podcasts. So they can find links to that. And any way they want to reach out to me is through realmenconnect.com.
Excellent. So we will put that information in the show notes. So if you're listening, check out the show notes, check out his podcast, check out his book, all the resources there. You will be encouraged. You will be blessed. You'll be challenged, but it's a good challenge.
Yes.
It's a very good challenge. So thank you so much for joining our podcast today. This has been a gift to me. I know it has been to our listeners. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Eric. Anytime, man. Anytime.
Wow. So many nuggets of truth that Dr. Joe Martin shared with us today. First, we are only as strong as the men we have around us. A man who has no accountability can't be counted on, and you become as strong as your team. Like, that whole idea is powerful. And as I look around me, I'm challenged. I'm trying to write down names and make a list and think, okay, is my team strong enough? And so, great point, great challenge there. Second, the idea that fear and pride are reasons we as guys don't seek community. Fear being this idea of, what are you going to think of me? Pride, just that issue of wanting to look better than we are, that we need to humble ourselves and do it afraid. Last, man, to be a great dad, as he talked about, you don't have to be perfect. He talked about those three things. We just need to be present, be available when our children need us the most, and to love our children unconditionally. Three powerful things that make being a dad a little bit easier, but super critical. So great conversation. His material, his websites, all in the show notes. Check them out. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review for us wherever you listen to podcasts. Doing so will help others to find us. Check out the show notes for resource information. We encourage you to do that for links and other references. We'd like to hear from you, so you can message us your questions or comments on Facebook, Instagram, at Entrusting the Faith. You can email us at info@entrustingthefaith.com. If you go to our website, which is www.entrustingthefaith.com, you can sign up to our email list and receive free resources as well as upcoming podcast episode information. So check it out. Lastly, just remember, legacies are built a day at a time. So start now.